I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a challenge. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you've got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
One hour down, 2 hours to go here as we rip it right here on the Early Line. It's Stubbs Anderson, it's Donnie Rightside, having a lot of fun, talking a lot of hot topics, and we love to give opinions. Like in the NBA, how can we make this better? Because if the All-Star Game was much-watched TV again, everybody would be loving it. Everybody would be watching it. The NBA would be making even more money. Hopefully we'll get that figured out. But the one thing that we do know, Dubsy, the NFL's got to figure it out. Ratings seem like they go up every single year. An exciting finish to the season with 3 games left, no doubt about it. But the energy is high. It's time for some NFL talk, Dubsy. Are you up to the challenge?
Let's go, Donnie. Not up for the challenge, born for the challenge, my guy. Happy hump day. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes being made, and we're going to jump into all of it, Donnie. So let's get after this thing. I've had my cold brew, not that it was poured on me from that little coffee bowl last night, but here early on a Wednesday, primed up, ready for a big performance. Let's go.
Back like when Nickelodeon used to put the slime like above the person's head, but you couldn't see the bucket, and they dumped it on you mid-show, just getting after it at this point right now, which we're going to do right now. The NFL, the championship is what everybody's goal is, not the cup champ. They don't have a cup championship in the NFL. They're not going to do a 3-game round robin who's going to win the NFL Cup. We're doing serious things here. And you know who's really serious? The Buffalo Bills, now the favorite at the FanDuel Sportsbook to win the Super Bowl at a plus 450 price, followed closely by the Philadelphia Eagles, and rounding out the final teams at 5-1 or less, it's the Kansas City Chiefs and it's the Detroit Lions. Let's start once again with the Buffalo Bills, Dubsy, the leaders in the clubhouse right now for the odds market to win the Super Bowl. Do you agree that's the correct move?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they showed they have got the measure for the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. I think they will have it in the playoffs there as well if they can run it alongside them. Look, Josh Allen, he's having a career best season, MVP. I think he solidified that last week in going against the Detroit Lions. They're obviously going to have to lock down on the defensive side, but they've got all the weapons. And, I thought they may have lost a step with that offense. No Stephon Diggs coming into this year, but they are looking dynamic. They can get it done with the passing game. Josh Allen can just hit that go button at any point in the game, Donnie. He legit looks like he's a grown man playing against a couple of high schoolers out there on a Friday night. There is levels to this thing, and he has looked far superior out there on the field at times. So I absolutely think the Bills are the top team in the conference, and I think they will be a very tough out going through the playoffs. I think they've learned a lot over the last couple of years, and I think they're ready to take that next step.
Now, if we take a look, too, because you're just looking at not the standings itself, but actually the way the teams play football offensively and defensively. If we look at the defensive side of things and you look at the top 4 that's listed at the FanDuel Sportsbook in the odds market, the Buffalo Bills are 27th overall in defense, according to Pro Football Focus. The Eagles, number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, Dubs, number 6, and the Detroit Lions are actually listed at 4th at this point, but that number is drastically going to change with how many injuries that they have. So if we're looking at the Bills, Josh Allen is absolutely sensational. That offense is motoring along. But could the downfall be of the Buffalo Bills at a plus 450 price, their defense, which again is outside of the top 25?
It really is, Donnie. I mean, you've given up 42 points to Detroit last weekend in their building, and, rightfully so. The Lions right up there as one of the best teams in the NFL. You gave up 44 to the Rams the week prior. You've got to get out of these track meets. Otherwise, it's a very tough spot in trying to win it, especially going into the playoffs. And I think the tough thing for the Bills is the measuring stick is not going to be an accurate one going through the next 3 weeks to close out the regular season. You've got the Patriots, Jets, and then the Patriots again on deck, who really aren't going to put up a lot of points. So they may be, snuck into the effect thinking, well, the defensive side has really taken a forward step. We've contained these next 3 games and kept each opposition under 20 points. I think the real measuring stick is not going to come until they hit the playoffs now. So a little concerning, and you cannot be giving up that many points. I don't care how good Josh Allen plays. That is not going to win you playoff football. So I think they've certainly got to address that. They've got a really good chance of trying to get things in order moving over the next few weeks here. But the offense, absolutely A+. You cannot be giving up 40 points back-to-back weeks. And I don't think they will against the Pats, but that could be their weakness going into the playoffs.
Which is still interesting, too, because you look at the Bills at the plus 450 price. Kansas City at a 5-1 price. Kansas City at the season end today, everything goes through Arrowhead Stadium, which is a major advantage. And I know some of that price point did change with Patrick Mahomes and this injury. But if he does play this weekend with no ill effects, we might see that Kansas City, with a victory over Houston, would jump back up to that top seed here. But as we're looking all the way through, for me, Dubs, if I look at the top 7 teams in the standings right now, I legitimately think there could be a Super Bowl run in each one of those teams. That's the Bills, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Vikings, and Packers. That's my cutoff line. And particularly on the FanDuel Sportsbook, that goes down to 13-1. The next team in line closest, or next 2 teams, is the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers at 30-1 respectively. So if we're looking at 13-1 or less, Dubsy, which again, Bills, Eagles, Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Vikings, and Packers, which team are you looking possibly to make a deep run, and who could get your money in the overall odds race?
Yeah, look, I've been big on the Rams as a bit of a price play. They're playing better football. Can they actually make a full tilt towards the Super Bowl? I'd probably say no. I don't think they've got the depth. I think the Green Bay Packers are built for the big stage, and they've been playing some really good football. That was a bit of a surprise, a bit of a shock from what we saw last week, rolling Seattle in their building, putting up a 30-piece. They almost got it done against Detroit in Detroit, and look very strong against 3 strong opponents prior to that as well. So Jordan Love, he's playing better and better. He's looking every bit of the superstar that we saw last season, now that he's coming back with full health. And Josh Jacobs setting the tone with that run game out of the backfield. And again, you look at their offense, it's dynamic. They can spread the field. They can get it done with the run game. So I think the Packers, and looking at their closeout for the year here, they've got a really good run into the playoffs. So I think it'd be Green Bay as the price for me. And it's very clear, the top couple of teams in the NFL, I think it's the Bills. I think it's the Detroit Lions. But outside of that, the great thing about the NFL and the playoffs is it's just one game. You've just got to roll them for one game, whether it be in their building or not. It's not a best of 3. And I think the Packers have got that knockout punch.
Yeah, and by the way, nobody's ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row, and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to try to do that. And if they are home for the holidays, as I like to say, which means the number 1 overall seed and the bye weekend, as long as they win, games will continue to be at Arrowhead. That's going to be a tough team, certainly, to try to unseat. But if we are folding and peeling back the layers, there still is that one team, because you brought up a great point here, Dubs, and I love to stress that. We don't play a 3-game set, a 5-game set, or a 7-game set where you know the better football team, barring non-disastrous injuries, is going to win that series. Like you see teams like the Baltimore Ravens at 8-1. You go, boy, they lost a few games this year. Are they still that same team? Nobody wants to see the Ravens in a 1-game playoff with Lamar Jackson. Some might say, yes, you do, because Lamar doesn't win those big games. But just on a day-to-day basis, any given Sunday, the Ravens can make that run. And then we take a look at the Minnesota Vikings, who get no respect. And by the way, Dubsy, we'll take a deeper look at them in just a few moments. But if they win out, they're the number 1 overall seed in the NFC. So many factors are going to change over the final 3 weeks. But I look at teams like the Ravens lying in the weeds right now, going like, okay, keep that disrespect coming here.
Yeah, and they're going to be playing with a chip on the shoulder. You know, we've seen enough through the regular season, but for Lamar Jackson, he's savvy enough to know what the press say about him, and he will be tested in the playoffs. And suddenly, you know, that 1-2 punch out of the backfield, what he can do with the wheels. I think they learned that lesson by not running the football, and that was, ultimately what led to their exit last season. They'll take that, they'll learn from it, and with that offense who can get it done with that run game, also Lamar, when he needs to get it downfield, can absolutely do that. They could be the team to watch and getting set for a bit of a run. If you look at the teams that you wouldn't want to play against in a playoff spot, that would be a very scary opposition. Not just Lamar Jackson, but King Henry. And I tell you what, Mark Andrews, he's looking better and better as well. So spot on there, Donnie. I think value is live. I think there's a lot more parity than what we've seen over the last couple of years.
Let's focus on the race to the top in the NFC and the AFC, because to me, the Philadelphia Eagles just might be the most well-rounded team in the NFL on offense and defense. We'll see how that plays out. And also, can the Philadelphia Eagles grab that 1 seed? Let's look at some schedules with 3 games to go right here on the early line. We'll be right back.
The holidays come with a touch of craziness, from unwrapping the latest storylines to the best betting insights. We've got everything you need to crank up the excitement this season. We can't promise there won't be a little yelling.
Play a decent schedule. They have maybe 500.
That just ruined my day.
But we can guarantee a whole lot of fun. Merry Christmas from all of us at SportsGrid.
You do not seem to be overly concerned about the Lions holding on to that 1 seed by the end of this season. Will Detroit have the NFC postseason run through the Motor City?
How many plays does the defense have to make in a shootout? They got to make 1 or 2 more plays, Ben, than the other team. And if they can do that, then Detroit is very much alive in any game.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Those guys, those rookies, the Pacom Daddies, the Jacob Toppins, right? The Tyler Koleks, those young kids. He wants to get them that check. It means a lot to Brunson. And honestly, folks, it's going to mean a lot to this New York Knicks franchise that's never been back to the Eastern Conference Finals or the NBA Finals since 1999.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. What he texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, like it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Dubsy, the race to the top in the NFC and the AFC. Down the stretch they come. 3 games left in the regular season. Let's put our focus here on the NFC. And with the odds to win the conference at the FanDuel Sportsbook, who's in the lead? It's the Philadelphia Eagles at a plus 220 price, followed by the Lions, Packers, Vikings, Buccaneers, and the Rams. But if we are focusing on right now, if the season ended today, the number 1 seed would go to the Detroit Lions. Their finishing schedule at the Chicago Bears, which you might say should be an easy victory, but this is now a banged-up Lions team that's used to playing in a dome all season long, going into the Windy City to try to take on a division rival, followed by at San Francisco, quite frankly, is banged up, but still in it in the NFC West to win it and get a possible playoff spot, and then that titanic battle against the Minnesota Vikings. Let's quickly start here with the Lions. To me, the best team in the NFL, but I got to be honest, right now, Dubsy, they're not the best team in the NFL. They're the most injured team in the NFL.
Most injured team in the NFL. Big Hutch telling us that he's going to be back ready to go if they make the Super Bowl. Please, my guy, take it easy. But getting set to square off against the Bears, who, look, Caleb Williams, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I can just feel there's a breakout game coming from the Bears, and you're going into their building. That's going to be a tough environment to play in. For the 49ers, they're still right there in the division. I can't figure out how, but I guess, a couple other teams have made that possible for them, and they're going to have that motivation in Santa Clara. And the Vikings, who are playing some really good football at this time of year as well. So, look, Detroit are playing with a lot of momentum. They didn't get the win last week, but I don't really think that's going to be enough to deter them. But it's injuries, it's the pressure, and it's the decisions being made by Dan Campbell at clutch times. It's similar to what we highlighted prior to the break. You can score plenty of points. We've seen that from Josh Allen, the Bills. We've seen it from the Lions, but that's not how the playoffs is going to go, Donnie. It's not going to be a 44-42 kind of track meet affair. It's going to be a low scorer where the defense has to get it done, and you've got to make the right decisions at the right times. Everyone is going to be primed up to their best, and I guess that would be the concern for me. Injuries and making those critical decisions going against a lot tougher teams, and they're going to get a really tough test trying to close out the regular season.
No, they are. And if you are looking at that 3-game slate with the way they're banged up, there is expected to be a loss in there. It just depends on who that loss is actually going to come to at this point. You saw them get hammered by the Buffalo Bills, which a lot of teams would get beat by them. But the question now turns up is next man up is always a fun topic to say, Dubsy, until it's next man up after the next man and the next man up after that guy who just got injured. That's what you're getting with the Detroit defense. You flip it over to the Philadelphia Eagles, who also have an identical record to the Detroit Lions at 12-2. You see them at Washington, then home to Dallas, and home to the New York Giants. This would be a tough game for the Eagles on the road. They were very impressive against the Steelers, but that was a physical football game. Now you see Washington at home in a must-win situation for them. If the Eagles win, they'll close out Washington and win the division. So looking at the Philadelphia Eagles as the favorites currently right now to win the NFC, those 3 games left on the schedule, that looks like they can navigate a 15-2 record, which is crazy good.
Yeah, and look, Donnie, we said going into last week that was going to be the testing spot for them, going against the informed Pittsburgh Steelers. But they showed up ready to play, and it looks like all has been squashed with A.J. Brown and star quarterback Jalen Hurts there for the Philadelphia Eagles. The quick way to resolve a bit of tension, get him the rock, get him into the end zone, and we saw that over the weekend there. So for the Eagles, who have suddenly looked like to have found that passing game at the right time of the year, their defense hasn't missed a beat. They're keeping teams to some low totals, and I do think they could pick up the next 3 wins. And look, the odds makers, they're telling us that it's all about the Eagles, but I still feel like the public, Donnie, aren't buying in. They're saying we've got to see a little more. They've poked holes through the schedule. They've put question marks through Jalen Hurts' play at quarterback. This is a team that's resilient. They've got a lot of moxie, a lot of character. Sirianni is coaching with his heart on his sleeve, and I think they're making a run at the right time of the year, and they may be able to try and close out this regular season with plenty of momentum and really take that through into the post. So I love what I've been seeing from the Eagles of late.
Yeah, it's been really good. It's been a great season, one that really looked like it was going to go off the rails early after that Tampa Bay loss on Monday Night Football, where they saw themselves at 2-2 heading into the bye. Haven't lost a single game since, in a franchise record double-digit win streak, which never happened in Philadelphia. But we do talk about the Minnesota Vikings. Or should I say, we don't talk about the Minnesota Vikings enough. They also sit 12-2, along with the Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the difference here is, yes, we expect Detroit to get a fight at Chicago, at San Francisco, and from Minnesota. The Eagles, a lot easier schedule, but the Vikings at Seattle, it looks like Geno Smith is probably going to be back for that game, an ultra important game for the Seattle Seahawks as well. Then you take on the Green Bay Packers, who are every bit as good as just about any team in the NFC, and then you finish at the Detroit Lions to end the season. So it's one team that we don't talk about all that much, that if they win out, Dubsy, they're the number one overall seed. But the question is, can they win out with that tough schedule?
No, I think they'll be lucky to get one win from the next three to close out the year. And not to take anything away from the Vikings, they've had a really good season. They're playing some really good football. I think they would be a tough out in the playoffs, but this is a very tough stretch up there in Seattle going against the Packers. So I'm obviously very bullish on. I think they're looking better and better, and then trying to close it out against Detroit over there at Ford Field. It's one of the toughest schedules remaining. So, look, for the Vikings, I think maybe one win from the next three. They're going to find themselves, making a way into the playoffs, but maybe not with the momentum that we could see from, the likes of the Eagles trying to rattle in there to the postseason.
It would be incredible, too, because for most of the season in the NFC, you were really trying to say, at least myself, that the Detroit Lions were probably the cream of the crop. If they're home for the playoffs, certainly going to be tough to beat. All those defensive injuries, David Montgomery, maybe the heart of that offense, they're down. Jahmyr Gibbs is a great running back, but now he's going to have to take all of those carries, not really get any breathers. But it was them, the Lions, and the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm interested to see now the Minnesota Vikings, again, controlling their own destiny, how they handle that situation and navigating those final three games. Because, yes, you can't win all three of those games at once. You have a tough road game in Seattle against the 12s. They'll be amped up for that game. Then you come home against certainly a Green Bay team that's every bit as talented as the Minnesota Vikings, probably the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Detroit Lions. Then you finish the season on the road against Detroit, where you know Detroit is going to need that as well. And also, talking about those seed lines, you lose that division, you drop down to the 5 line as opposed to the 1 line here. So many ramifications here that still have to be discovered in the NFC over these final 3 games. But now we shift our focus over to the AFC picture. We'll talk about that next, right here on the Early Line.
I'm actually not even on a side today.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that. Why are you on Texas?
I gave them a chance. Maybe not me as the overwhelming authority in college football, but entering that game on this set to you guys, I said there was one elite defense entering the matchup in Austin back to end out October. It's not the Bulldogs like it used to be. It is Texas.
College football today, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred or just worked on the side or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro football today, only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what?
circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The race for the AFC's top seed, and again, 3 games left as well. If we're looking right now on the odds market at the FanDuel Sportsbook for the AFC to claim that spot and win the AFC Championship, the Buffalo Bills at a plus 200 price to win the AFC. Kansas City plus 240, the Ravens at plus 390. Then we have that little shelf there before we get to 11-1, the Houston Texans. But let's put our focus here on the Kansas City Chiefs. If the season ended today, they would be the number 1 overall seed, 13-1 record. And if we're looking at their final 3 games, tough as they get to, Dubbsy. You look at those games they're going to play, Houston at home, then at Pittsburgh and at Denver. Houston, yes, they won their division. They probably can't move up all that far in the seeding at this point, but there's still 3 games left to play. You're getting their best punch. Then you see the following week here at the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're fighting for their lives here in their division. You'll get their best punch. And the final game of the season, the anticipation of the Denver Broncos still needed to win that game to stay in the playoff race. You're going to get their best punch. And also, Patrick Mahomes with that high ankle sprain, that doesn't heal itself overnight. And even if he does play, a chance to re-injure, no doubt about it. The Kansas City Chiefs for you, Dubbsy. What are we thinking?
Look, they're the reigning champs, 2-time champs, looking to make it 3 in a row. And, you know, there's certain metrics and stats that we just really can't, you know, put a measure on. But they do have the intangibles. And for Patty Mahomes playing banged up, I guess what separates Patrick Mahomes, not just, you know, that elite quarterback play that we see week in, week out, is that he's such a smart footballer. If he were to be a go going against the Texans this weekend, I think he's really savvy and protecting his body, and he certainly will try and keep himself out of harm's way. But I think it's a really tough matchup whether he's going to play or not for the Chiefs going against the Texans, who are looking better and better. You highlighted going into Pittsburgh the week after this one. That gets a little tougher, and the Broncos, with everything on the line to close out the regular season, this is a tough spot. So I think if you're looking to buy in on the Kansas City Chiefs and trying to pick up another Lombardi, I'd maybe wait a couple of weeks, Donnie. I think they're going to drop at least one of the next 2 here, and you're going to get a bit of a buy low spot. And this is a team they don't need to figure it out. They know exactly what they bring to the table, and they haven't been chasing, you know, stuff in the stat sheet. They just do enough to get that result. I think they've only had one win for more than a 10-point margin. So it's been a matter of winning the arm wrestle, winning the rock fight, and that's what's going to win playoff football, games. So, look, the Kansas City Chiefs, a really tough ending here for the regular season. I think they're going to drop 1, maybe even 2 of the next 3. Patty Mahomes playing a little banged up. I'd give him a chance, Donnie. I'd tell him, take it easy. We really don't need you in the mix for this one, but we need you back at full health going against the Steelers and trying to pick up a bit of momentum. So they're still the team for me. They're still riding the mix, but a couple of question marks at the pointy end of the season. What about for you, Donnie? Have you seen enough? Do you have confidence in that they're still going to be the team to beat?
I do think they're the team to beat because I do think they're going to get that number 1 seed, as you see those odds at minus 200 for them to achieve that. And that number has actually gotten higher since yesterday when we weren't really sure if Patrick Mahomes was going to play this weekend. A full practice in. It looks like he's all trending to start. And also, they do have room for error, Dubs, right? They can slip up and lose a football game, and still it doesn't matter what any other team did. Now, they slip up and lose 2 football games. Now you lose the tiebreaker to the Buffalo Bills. So if we start with the Buffalo Bills, and again, I do think Kansas City will wind up being that number 1 seed. But the Buffalo Bills versus New England, versus the New York Jets, versus New England, that should be a 3-0 right here. So the pressure is going to come on Kansas City, as we talked about. Houston's going to be a tough game, and the final 2 games should certainly be tough games. And then we throw in the Pittsburgh Steelers into that equation, where they sit at 10-4 after getting beat by the Eagles, but they got a monster game on deck against the Baltimore Ravens to try to fight them off to win the division. And then they take on Kansas City and end the year against Cincinnati, who might, a long shot, still have something to play for and get Cincinnati's best punch. So a lot of things up in the air, but I do think that minus 200 price point is correct. Let's just say Mahomes hobbles around this weekend and somehow still pulls out a victory. Well, then they just have to win one game out of Pittsburgh and Denver. And could that opportunity in the last game of the year against Denver on the road, where Denver might have already clinched that playoff spot in a good scenario for the Kansas City Chiefs? That's the way I look at it here. But for me, the most dangerous team out of that three is still going to be the Buffalo Bills because they got Josh Allen, Dubsy.
And Josh Allen, career best. He's doing everything in his power. It's certainly going to be a big advantage. If this one goes through Arrowhead, it's going to be a tough bout. So maybe just one more win, that's going to be enough for them, the difference maker. But if you're looking at it and saying who is the best team, any given Sunday, it's been the Buffalo Bills. So watch out for Joshie Allen. He knows the numbers. He knows the stats. They know what they say in the postseason going against the Chiefs. It's time for him to step up.
Yep. Yeah, that's good stuff. It's good talking points, and we're going to continue those in the NFC. Let's look at maybe some of the matchups as well that could be taking place right here on the early line.
Uncle Stevie can just walk up the aisle like he's at the supermarket. I'll get a starting pitcher here, I'll get a closer here, I'll get a first baseman here, and he'll just keep throwing things in the cart because there is no limit.
Now he's gone, so they got to go get arms to make that team better. Because the bottom line was they were just outclassed by the Dodgers. Let's face it, they got their ass beat.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I want the mid-major teams. I want the A-10 to get 3 bids. I want, the Missouri Valley Conference to get an extra bid. I want these teams to go ahead that are one-bid leagues and give some of these other teams opportunities to make the NCAA tournament. Simply put, folks, when we get to the tournament, we don't care about all these teams that are big-time teams.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
How do you find some of this great talent that you've brought in, who are still early in their career, might not have a ton of tape on them yet?
I've been around this business, man, for almost 20 years. So a lot of these guys will tell you that I popped into a lot of gyms, sparred, or just worked on the side, or, kind of worked out, just watching. I've always loved this sport, man. I think it's the greatest. And we want to continue to put on the next up-and-coming superstars. We know we got them.
Only on SportsGrid.
The NFL and college, they don't operate on the same timelines, right? UNLV's head coach just got, the Purdue job this morning, where I imagine, right, UNC probably needs to know from Bill.
And let's say it's late December, and we see 7, 8 teams open, and none of them want Bill. Then Bill's got to make a decision. Does he want to be a college head coach?
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The NFC playoff picture coming into focus right on the early line. Dubbs Anderson and Donnie Rightside breaking it down for you because we only have 3 games left in the regular season to try to determine who's going to get these seeds. Now, if the season ended today, the division leaders, the Lions, Eagles, Buccaneers, and the Rams, 1 through 4. The wild card standings, number 5 would be the Vikings, number 6 the Packers, 7 the Commanders. Close on that cutoff line is the Seahawks, and the reason we list the Falcons at 7-7 is only 1 game back of the 8-6 Buccaneers. But let's have some fun with this too. Let's just say this was the way it ended up. You remove the Lions from the picture in round number 1 because they would have the only bye. They need it, get rested and ready for round number 2. But that would line the Philadelphia Eagles, Dubsy, up with the Commanders in round number 1, the Buccaneers with the Packers, and then the Rams at the Vikings. So if you are looking at saying, won our division, which means the Buccaneers and the Rams, you get the Vikings and the Packers right out of the gate. My goodness.
It'd be quite the opening round of the playoffs there, Donnie, and trying to take an early lean, it's nearly impossible. Once you get through Detroit there, I mean, the Eagles against the Commanders, love the look of Philly there, but the Bucs going in taking on the Packers, over there, Tevin, that'd be a tough matchup. And the Rams against the Vikings, I've still got, question marks on who'd be the better team out of those two squaring off. So it's right in the balance right now. Outside of the top team, top two, I do feel like there's a lot of parity. And as we highlighted earlier in the show, with the great thing about, it being a one and done in the playoffs there, you've only got to work your way past it and pull a one upset to get through to the next round. Is anyone can show up and get it done. I really feel like it's wide open this season. I really don't think there's much of a difference between the top of the board, the top seed, and whoever comes in for seventh place. So if you're big on a value, long shot play, I think the board is absolutely live for some of the wild card contenders.
Yeah, you also look at it too, like I guess the Buccaneers would be favored, but I don't even know. Like, you're looking at that matchup here, Buccaneers and the Rams, as those 3-4 seeds at home. But the Vikings, would they be favored, and would the Packers be favored? That's what makes it so tough, because that NFC North is so good that it's like, yes, you're going to win the division for the other seeds, but you got to line them up here. That's how imperative it is if you're the Lions, you get that number one seed just to avoid this mess. And also, the Philadelphia Eagles sitting in that 2 seed, who it's no slouch if it winds up, let's just say, being the Commanders in that 7 seed. But my goodness, you don't want to line up in game 1 of the playoffs with all that pressure and see the Packers and the Vikings maybe storming the fort at that point. But if we are looking, Dubsy, right, let's just say Lions, Eagles, Buccaneers, Rams, that's 1 through 4. If you see 5, 6, and 7, like, which one of those teams you feel goes the distance or has the chance to more than the other? Because to me, it would be in the same order as it's listed, Vikings, Packers, and Commanders. But do you see it any other way in the NFC?
Look, I like the Packers as the price play, but they're certainly going to have, a very tough assignment. I think it would have to be, the Vikings. If they were to square off going against the Rams, they'd have the best chance because, there's just been a little inconsistency with the Rams. When that offense is absolutely singing, they can mix it with the best of them. But, if Cooper or Puka or Kyron weren't to show up, if Matty Stafford were to, come up with a couple of key turnovers, which we've seen from Matty Stafford in the past, then I think the Vikings would probably have the best chance of pulling that upset if they were, in fact, booked as dogs there to open up the playoffs. So I think it'd be a fantastic opening round. Some of these matchups, you wouldn't be shocked if the lowest seed were to show up and get the victory. You look at, in terms of going into playing in a hostile environment, probably, over in your neck of the woods, going against the Eagles, Donnie, that's going to be the toughest assignment. And that's probably the team that I'd say, not that I'm losing a lot of stock in, but for the Commanders and Daniels, you look at their record, very impressive. But I just keep watching them play thinking they're going to come undone. They're going to come undone. And I think it's finally going to catch up to them this week going against Philadelphia. So that'd probably be the biggest fade for me, but they'd probably also be the biggest dog going in there to the playoffs if they were to, in fact, get the Eagles week 1.
So we'll put you on the spot here, Dubsy. Of those odds to win the NFC, Eagles, Lions, Packers, Vikings, Buccaneers, and Rams, who would get your money right now to win the NFC?
Oh, Donnie, why are you going to do me like this? I think
Come on.
It'd be Detroit. I think they'll find a way here. Plus 240, if you can get them in their building at Ford Field, they're going to be a very tough out. But if they don't have that 1 seed, then I take that out of the mix. So it's a little chalky, Donnie. Whoever gets that 1 seed, they're going to take out the conference. Surprise, surprise. But I'll still lean towards Detroit as being the best team. But the best team with, I guess, the most momentum, it's going to be your Eagles, and the odds board very reflective of that, sitting at a short price, plus 220 at the FD Sportsbook.
Great finish in the NFC. Let's roll it over to the AFC, because we are certainly, with 3 games to go, have a lot of turmoil. Top of the standings, if the season ended today, number 1 overall seed, that's the Chiefs, followed by the Bills, Steelers, and Texans. The wild cards, my goodness, the Ravens, the Broncos, and the Chargers, followed close behind by the Colts and the Dolphins here, which makes up for some crazy matchups. If we remove, once again, Dubsy, the Chiefs from the equation, the Bills would take on the Chargers, the Steelers would take on the Broncos, and the Ravens and Texans will line up here. So the thoughts on going into the playoffs here, intriguing matchups nonetheless, but do we agree if the Chiefs hold that top spot and at the FanDuel Sportsbook, a plus 240 price, has a great chance to win that conference, because you're figuring Mahomes will be healthy?
He'll be healthy, and he'll be at Arrowhead, so that's going to be a very tough assignment. I think the Bills are, the best team in the conference, but just having that home ground advantage, I think that could be the deciding factor. We teased it a little earlier, just giving up so many points here for the Bills. You're not going to have that opportunity going against, a tougher defensive unit there. So that's the concern for the Bills. But again, it's wide open for a bit of a race. I feel like this year, more so than any other, it could be, we could see a nice little lane here for a bit of an upset run. I think the Ravens are going to get a nice little look at possibly pulling that upset. I think the Denver Broncos, they'd be a tough out in week one, whether, they're getting the Steelers over there in Pittsburgh. That's going to be a low scoring, Peyton going against Tomlin, two of the smartest minds in the game. So I think the Broncos have a very good chance of pulling the upset if they could, find their way into the playoffs. So I've said it once, I'll say it again, parity more so than any other past season coming into the playoffs for this year, Donnie. What about for you? Is it all about the Chiefs? Who would be, I guess, not that long shot, but that value play that could pull a bit of an upset and make that run?
Yeah, I don't think, Dubbsy, to be honest, the Chiefs are the best team in the AFC, but circumstances dictate on what those outcomes, I think, will be. That means if the Chiefs are the number one overall seed, they get the extra week, and Patrick Mahomes may be resting up that ankle even more. They're home at Arrowhead. They're extremely tough to beat anywhere, let alone on their home field. But if you are sliding that needle down, I do think the Bills have the capabilities and have shown over the past couple weeks, which includes beating the Kansas City Chiefs. They can handle the AFC. The intrigue for me really comes at that 5 seed right now, which could change. And maybe if you see a victory this week out of the Ravens, they could overtake the Pittsburgh Steelers and steal that division lead, which gives them the home game. But I'll tell you right now, if you are the Texans, hey, cruise control right now, let's sit in this 4 seed, and you end up round 1 with the Ravens in your own building, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for them. So when I look at some of the odds here, right, Bills plus 200 to win the AFC, Kansas City Chiefs plus 240 price, the Ravens plus 390, and then you see the Texans 11-1 along with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That team that could really throw a wrinkle if they bring their A game is the Baltimore Ravens. They're built to win in any type of weather, but we're still waiting, Dubbsy. Can Lamar Jackson deliver when it absolutely matters the most in the playoffs?
I think he can, Donnie, and I think he would have learned a lot of lessons from last season and years prior. Obviously, it's not all about listening to the media, but he hears that smoke directed towards him. We know they abandoned the run game when they absolutely shouldn't have last year. And guess what? Now you've got King Henry leading the backfield there as well. So they can get it done with the run game. The wide receivers have been fantastic. And suddenly you've got the big 1-2 punch there with your tight ends as well. So this offense, this quarterback, that running back, a very, very scary and formidable out. You get him at plus 390, Tony. I don't care where you're playing this one. They'd be scary.
Bottoms up at the bar, yeah. That means you're drinking and having a good time. Bottoms up in the NFL, you're hoping you even have a job next year. Let's talk about the worst teams next.
There's a better chance the Raiders might stumble into a win because of who they're playing over the next few weeks than the Giants, who I don't think will win.
I don't believe for 1 minute that they want to win a game. I do not believe that the New York Football Giants want to win a game at all because it will cost them dearly. In fact, they will continue to suck for years to come if they screw this up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. with 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Dubbs, we like great football. We like to watch entertaining football on our television. It's great when the big teams line up because we sit down and enjoy it, which is why we talk playoff race. Once we get to the playoffs, great football teams playing great football, we love that. But there's also the other side of the NFL with horrendous football teams that we see on a week-to-week basis. And it's crazy because you might sell yourself, right? You look at the Major League Baseball and you go, well, one team's going to spend $350 million on the roster, Dubbs. The other's going to spend $30 million. Of course, there's a discrepancy. But in the NFL, you have a cap and you have a number you can't go below. So theoretically, every single team should have the same opportunities to be good as any other team. And also, if you're bad, you get a higher draft pick with a quicker chance to improve your football team. But still, we have teams that are 2 wins and 3 wins and 4 wins on the season. So now as we take a look at the race to the bottom and the NFL's worst records, which we talked about, the Tennessee Titans at 3-11 earlier with Will Levis. Why are you making a quarterback change? Just stay with the narrative that Levis will continue to lose football games so you could have the worst record. It's tough as a fan base to enter the season and go, I hope we end up with the worst record. No, because early on, maybe the team gets good and you can make a playoff run and you can cheer on your team. But it's apparent once you get to December, if your team's not going to make the playoffs, lose every possible game you can. So the 2 teams, let's start here. The Las Vegas Raiders and the New York Giants, both with 2 wins. You look at the remaining schedule. For the Raiders, it's Jacksonville, it's New Orleans, and it's the Chargers. For the Giants, it's Atlanta, Indianapolis, and Philadelphia. So for me, the Raiders actually have winnable games, if that makes sense, even if I don't think they're probably going to win. The Giants, playing at Atlanta, they're probably going to lose that game because Atlanta's fighting for something. Then Indianapolis, 2 weeks before the season ends, Indy's still in the playoff race. They'll be fighting. And then at the Philadelphia Eagles, which will be interesting. If the Eagles have, let's just say, maybe the number 1 seed locked up, or they can't get the number 1 overall seed, do the Giants still even want to play in that football game because they know they want to lose? Who is that top seed to be the worst seed, Dubsy? Which means you get the number 1 overall pick.
My best, worst team, it's going to be in New York, Donnie. It's going to be the Giants. I think they've got a slightly tougher schedule than what we see there for the Raiders. But look, who wants Shedeur Sanders? Who wants him the most? I think it's the Giants. They really need that top quarterback, and they don't have the answers. It doesn't matter who they put at quarterback, whether it's Tommy Cutlets, whether it's Timmy Boyle, whether it's been Drew Lock. They've got nothing. They've got no weapons. It's so embarrassing to watch, Donnie. But you know what? I like watching some of these lower-rated football teams on a Sunday afternoon because, I sit there, Donnie, and say, well, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be playing like Bryce Young for the Panthers. Maybe I'd connect on every 10th pass. Maybe I could scramble for 5-6 yards and still miss that first down, that opportunity to get the boys across the sticks. But I think the Giants they're not picking up another win to close out this season. They'll finish off with 2 wins for the year, and I think that's going to be enough for them to get that number 1 draft pick. Out of the cellar dwellers for you, Donnie, who's been the standout? Who are you most surprised with that we're talking about trying to vie for that number 1 draft spot?
I'll tell you who might get the most help here, if that makes sense, Stubbs. Like, you look at the Raiders. What are they in the market for? Absolutely a quarterback. You saw the signs in the back of the end zone repeatedly, tank for Shador. Then you take a look at the New York Giants, absolutely in need of a quarterback. Now, you do have two talented quarterbacks up top. Are they generational guys that we talk about, like the Trevor Lawrences or the Andrew Lucks, or are you actually tanking? Caleb Williams was thought to be one of those guys last year. Not necessarily, but let's just say, Dubbsy, 1-2 finish, Raiders and Giants. They both have to go quarterback. They really do. So, which leads me to the New England Patriots at 3-11. Let's just say they lose to Buffalo, the Chargers, and Buffalo again, which they probably will. They seemingly think they have their quarterback in Drake May, which might allow them to get a player like Travis Hunter and not spend capital to move up and get that quarterback, or even Travis Hunter. I do think that is interesting to me. So you are looking, and again, this is what we talk about sometimes if it's September, October, November. Typically, honestly, Dubbs, head coaches will never tank a football game. Their job is to get their team most prepared. You know, tanks the football game, the general manager, when he comes into the coach's office, he goes, you're playing this guy, and this guy. You're sitting this guy, and this guy. And, oh, yeah, you thought you were going to play your middle linebacker? He's now on IR for the rest of the year with some mysterious elbow injury, so you can't play him at all. So for me, I still think the Raiders, who are in pole position to get their pick at number 1, I can't imagine they win any of those games, even if they are winnable. And I'm talking about you should be actively sabotaging your team. A couple years ago, Dubbsy, I remember a standalone game. The Philadelphia Eagles, during COVID at home, were playing the Washington football team at the time. And Jalen Hurts was told, get out of that game. We're putting in Nate Sudfeld to make sure we don't win this game, which they wound up getting Devonta Smith from that pick, which was a great move. There is no way the Raiders and Giants should come anywhere close to winning those final 2 games, which means you should be actively fading them down the stretch. Because if they do win, that's just malpractice on your franchise.
Yeah, it really is. And that's one way to send the fan base stir crazy there. And we've seen, you know, Shador Sanders, it feels like he's welcoming the opportunity about trying to make his way over there to Sin City. And I think, you know, they're going against the Jags, who showed a bit of fight last week. You've got the Saints over in the Big Easy, and then the Chargers, who are still going to have plenty on the line to finish out the year. So the Raiders, top choice as finishing the worst team in the National Football League. A little disappointed from the Panthers, Donnie. That's who I highlighted preseason to have the worst winning record, and suddenly Bryce Young has got him at 3 wins. So that's a little disappointing for me.
Dubbs, one of these teams is going to win a football game in Week 18 and absolutely send their fan base over the edge. I can only go from personal experience, and I wasn't even basically around at the time to cheer this on. But the Philadelphia Eagles had the worst record in football in the 1970s and won their final game, which cost them O.J. Simpson, which would have been on their roster to help them out. Teams have done this all along. I just can't wait to see if the Raiders and the Giants each have 2 wins left, as the Raiders will play the Chargers and the Giants will play the Philadelphia Eagles, what their rosters will look like in that final game. And if they even they might just take a knee the whole game to make sure they can't actually win that football game. So even though we look at the top of the standings of how intriguing it's going to be, Dubbsy, on the way out, which team's getting the 1, 2, and the 3 position, equally intriguing for these teams with 3 and 2 wins on who's actually going to be that number 1 overall pick. We'll certainly find out. Let's move on to the awards market. Josh Allen, is he your MVP? Let's talk about it next.
There's a better chance the Raiders might stumble into a win because of who they're playing over the next few weeks than the Giants, who I don't think will win.
I don't believe for 1 minute that they want to win a game. I do not believe that the New York Football Giants want to win a game at all, because it will cost them dearly. In fact, they will continue to suck for years to come if they screw this up.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The 2 guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
Blocked well and tries to cut through the middle. Oh!
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Season awards. It's that time of season here. And maybe these awards were already opened up, Dubbs. You're supposed to wrap presents at Christmas time, not have the gifts already open. Did the gift already open in the MVP market? Because Josh Allen has been nothing short of sensational this football season, particularly over the past couple weeks. And at the FanDuel Sportsbook this morning, if you want to invest in Josh Allen being the MVP of the regular season, he's at a minus 900 price, followed by Lamar Jackson, who threw 5 touchdown passes this past weekend. And then Saquon, who was ramping up. I mean, the guy gets 60 yards like he's trash. Get him out of here. Now back to 18-1. Dubsy, Josh Allen. How can Lamar Jackson pass him or Saquon Barkley over the final couple weeks of the season? Or he can't. It's going to be Josh Allen, and that's all that's said and done.
Yeah, I don't think a running back can catch Josh Allen. I don't think Lamborghini, Action Jackson, Lamar Jackson can catch Josh Allen. And I think that was the cherry on top from what we saw last weekend. Really not going to have to stuff the stat sheet to close out the regular season. And, I think it bodes well for Josh Allen with a lot of pundits saying that they were losing stock coming in to this year. But suddenly you've got a very competent running back that's allowed Josh Allen to really free up, and he can use the wheels. He's the most athletic quarterback, arguably one of the most athletic quarterbacks. The arms look fantastic. He's going to reach 3,500 passing yards out of this weekend. He's got 25 passing tutties there. He's getting it into their house. He's doing everything for his team to make them championship contenders, and it's really going to be tough for them to lose any of that stock. I guess, the running backs are always up against it in this award, and for Lamar Jackson, just having a couple other weapons that he's been splitting that workload, that fanfare with in terms of trying to get stock in this award, it's going to be a tough sell. So, yes, I think Josh Allen and that fantastic quarterback play that we've seen week in, week out is going to be enough for him to solidify this award. And we're seeing that very reflective here in the odds market, minus 900. So really going to be tough for any player trying to play catch up and take out this one.
Here's my favorite, though, Dubs, right? Because if you win the MVP, you still have the Offensive Player of the Year. But if you win the MVP and you're on offense, you can't win Offensive Player of the Year. Let's remove that from the equation. Let's even get down a little bit deeper. Number 2 in the odds race here to win MVP is Lamar Jackson at plus 650. So you figure if he doesn't win that, well, then he's a shoo-in to win Offensive Player of the Year because he came in second in the MVP market. Then you slide it down like, well, wait a second. Saquon Barkley's 18-1 to win the MVP, but minus 500 to win the actual Offensive Player of the Year. And then Jamar Chase followed by Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, and then Lamar Jackson at 35-1 to win the regular season Offensive Player of the Year. So I won't confuse you any further. Is it going to be Saquon Barkley, or can somebody else jump up and take that award from Saquon?
Well, I mean, it's tough in trying to have a measuring stick on how they decipher and differentiate between the two. But from what we've seen out of Saquon, he's looked fantastic. And, the numbers really support Jamar Chase as well. But Saquon Barkley, not only is he stuffing the numbers and the stat sheet, what's he had most carries in the NFL. He's got the most yards, almost at 1,700 rushing yards. He's probably going to get to 2K. He's getting it into the house, and he's picking up style points. He's doing backflips over the opponents, and he's really carried this run for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I agree with the market, and I think he's going to be another tough one to catch. Minus 500. There's a lot of juice there. But for Jamar Chase, Josh Allen, if he were to be taken out of the equation, I just don't think any of these other contenders can really quite catch up to Saquon. And it's going to be tough for him to lose stock because he's just got that workload week in, week out, Donnie. We saw a bit of a low spot last week, and he still put up strong numbers. So Saquon, Offensive Player of the Year, and rightfully so.
There's 3 games still left to play. We looked at the MVP market, and Josh Allen feels like he is such a lock to win that award at minus 900, which is a great price point for him, saying he's probably going to win it. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Jaden Daniels, minus 4,000 to win that award, almost 4 times to 5 times as high as what we're seeing out of Josh Allen in the MVP race, with Bo Nix at a plus 1,200. Bo Nix has a couple monster games to finish this season out. Is this race over, and should Jaden Daniels be a minus 4,000 favorite at the FanDuel Sportsbook?
No, I don't agree with this one, Donnie. I think there's a big discrepancy from what we've seen. I tell you what, Brock Bowers, he's on the other conversation as well. What would have to go wrong for Jaden Daniels? He'd have to, go for less than 200 passing yards for probably 2 of the next 3. For Bo Nix, he would probably have to go north of 250, but there's only 70 yards between them. I guess the discrepancy in the odds goes back to the start of the year when we're talking about Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels as being the 2 superstars and Bo Nix in that fanfare. I think Nix is live at 12-1, Donnie. They're upset it.
Defensive Player of the Year, TJ Watt. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Quinyon Mitchell. And Coach of the Year, Kevin O'Connell lead the other races. Hour number 3, next.